Testing one, two, three. I think we're live. All right. Well, good to see you guys. No, Trooper Henry's was first. Good to see you, man. Yeah, usually I don't have it open. Before I was using StreamYard, I was lucky if I just got the darn thing working right when I turned it on. But somehow I was able to get the chat all lined up, and I think it's because I actually had a few minutes before I turned the thing on today to actually have better preparation. So there you go. How's the audio video there, Trooper? Just curious. Let me know in the chat when you get a second. Um, I'm gonna give him a second to let me know before I even get into anything here. Hopefully it's good. Trooper, I hope you're still there. I think so. Okay, very good, good. All right, anyway, let's take a look at a couple of things tonight. First off, thanks for the new shirt, Mom. She has sent this one to me, and not sure if she's watching. I think they had a better, easier time watching on Thursday nights, but I'm not sure if they ever get a chance to do Tuesday. But either way, good to see you guys. They visited me here this last weekend and got to get my stepdad Dave a couple new Lafroig offerings, the 16 and the Carriages 2019, the new triple wood cast strength. And he was into both like I was for different reasons, and it just depends on your mood. But with that said, tonight we're going to go in a different direction than usual, which is fine by me because thankfully I've had a lot of time to take a look at this particular distillery, and it's in the Highlands region, which is not usually where I would go for my own personal Scotch, fun. But with this distillery, it's a pleasant try. I'm trying to think if I've ever been let down by these guys. Really, not in a major way. I mean, if you look across the board, Glenmorangie is the distillery we're going to take a look at. If you look across the board at their offerings, I've noticed they rarely ever really get rated below what I would consider an average dram. I don't usually see any low marks on their stuff, no matter what, if it's like a core or if it's a private edition, like one of their kind of like equivalent to the Lafroig Carriages. They have a series release every year. They change the name of it though, and some of their they don't really missed a dime, it seems like, on that. Thanks a lot, Trooper, for the kind comment. I appreciate it. Yeah, Glenmorangie is usually pretty nice stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. And for the occasion, I've decided, and as you can tell, I've had a little experience with this bottle. I'm going to take a look at doing kind of a mini review of the Glenmorangie Quinta Ruban 14, which is the new port cast finish. This was a 12-year for quite a while, and I'm very familiar with that one. That one and this one are similar, but this one I think is better. I think the 2 years does give it a little more power, a little more, and a little more finesse. It's kind of like a two-pronged sword, a two-pronged attack that it comes from it. This is aged in American bourbon casks and finished in fine ruby port casks. What they typically do overall, which is kind of cool, the Glenmorangie has an original 10-year. That's what they call it. It's their base part of their core, and it's by itself, it's an okay whiskey for me. I mean, I didn't rate it, I think, above like a 2 or a 2.5, only because it's just a good base, and when you have been able to try a lot of these other ones, like their La Santa, which is a 12-year, and the new Quinta Ruban, which is a 14 in a port, they've got Sauternes casks. They aren't afraid to play around, and but they would take that 10-year, that core, and they put it for the La Santa. They'll put it in 2 years for, I believe it's a sherry cask, and then for the Quinta Ruban, they put it. Now, this time, instead of the 2 for the 12 they did before, now it's a 4-year venture, I believe, into that. Let me double check to make sure I'm not giving you the incorrect information, because that's what they used to do. That was kind of like the way they did all their whiskeys. This one increased from 12 to 14 in the summer of this year. The initial maturation remains the same in the first 10 years spent in ex-bourbon cask, but the whiskey is finished for 4 rather than 2 years in the former ruby port cask. I'm getting this from distiller.com. If you guys aren't familiar with it, good place to kind of get your scientific data and some of your notes. And I'm one of many that also will occasionally write a review up there, but now I'm doing a lot of videos, so I might catch up on some of the writing over there when I get a chance. That's a non-chill filtered bottle. Does it say anything about coloring? That leads me to maybe suspect maybe a hint of color in there. This is a bit dark, but it's port cask. When you don't specify it's no added coloring, that's usually a sign that it does have some in there. But, you know, that's not always the law, so you got to be careful about that. Hey, there's Lost Cause, and there's Whiskey Ace. Good to see you guys. Troopers had the 12 Quinta, but the 14 is definitely a step up. Yeah, the 12 Quinta Raban is better in Lost Cause's opinion. Interesting. And he thought the 12 had a better mouthfeel, less bitter overall. Okay. Might pour a dram from each to check again. Not a bad idea, Lost Cause. Definitely feel free to pour, because after we talk about Glenmorangie in depth, we're going to do some blends together, and hopefully we can do one. I've got some left in here. I might try it with something, but I'm going to gauge you guys. I'm going to do a little experiment, and we're going to talk about what would be the best. And I'm not going to reveal it to the distillery yet. It's going to be a surprise after the Glenmorangie talk. But we're going to look at PX, Oloroso, or a port. Which are you guys going to think would be the best to add to this distillery base tenure and see where it goes? Because, well, I'll tell you guys in a little bit. Hopefully DHS will stop by, because DHS has some more insight to this particular distillery than I do, because he's had one offering that I haven't had, that they had their distiller's edition, and I've seen he put a review on it. He wasn't all that into it. I'm not surprised, though, knowing what they use this distillery for, but we'll get in that later. Anyway, so back to Glenmorangie. If you want to follow along with me, Fino Sherry Cask. Well, I don't think I'm going to have that as an option there, Trooper, unfortunately, unless I go digging into other bottles that I didn't think about. But we'll come to that bridge and cross it when we get there. You know what I mean? Anyway, the Glenmorangie core range just hasn't been enough to pull me to the higher end. Well, we're going to talk about that, Lost Cause, and get into some things. I'm going to give you some advice on maybe where to step before you step to the really high-end stuff, which we'll talk about too. Let's go and get our spreadsheet. Now, if you want to follow along, go to the channel, of course, and then at the top you'll see discussions, and there should be 2 spreadsheets in there that you can click on and actually have access to read the first one is the new distillery list that has all the distilleries in it. It has where they're located, it has their region, and has who owns them. I got that information from the Wikipedia, a list of all the Scottish distilleries, dead and living. And also I've added my own information to it that I'm kind of getting from you guys and sharing it. Is we're going to rate it for taste, consistency, variety, age statements, availability, value, and overall like their craft process, which we'll get into depth, you know, as we go along. So starting with Glenmorangie, they are owned by LVMH, which I knew and I forgot that Louis Vuitton is basically what Hennessy is, like the last part of that. They have two brands of the two distilleries that they run, Ardbeg and Glenmorangie, and I knew of that, but I didn't. I forgot all about the Louis Vuitton being part of it, which is kind of interesting. For them to pick two distilleries, they picked two good ones, I have to say. I'm not sure how the Ardbeg was in the 90s before it closed up and was mothballed. I don't know if it really did as well or near as well as they do today, but it's well regarded. It's might not be as well known as Lagavulin from Diageo or something like that, but as far as quality, it can hang right there with Beam Centauri, which has Lafroig, and Lagavulin, which is from Diageo. It can hang with those brands, as well. Glenmorangie being a Highland, it can hang with the other guys too. It's got a fine, I think, a overall fine core, even though. The base, the 10-year doesn't really do it for me, but the La Santa, which is part of their core, it's a 12-year sherry cask influence. I love that dram. I really like it. Kita Raban, to me, it's like a hazelnut. I'm speaking for the 12, not the 14. It was a hazelnutty, really nice dram. Port finish, of course. The Sauternes, which is I think the Nectar Noir, another solid one. I like the overall taste of them, but then you get into the more private editions, and we'll get into that. But let's talk overall taste, guys, in Lost Cause, Trooper, Whiskey. Anybody else that's watching along, feel free to chime in and give me a number, 1 to 10. Looking at their core, looking at the private editions you might have had, like the Calta, the new Alta, the Spias, the Two Cell, the Machon, lots of you know lots to look at. Not even going into like their 70s vintage stuff, which is they ironically they age statement their stuff up to about 18, like specifically. They're still age statements, but they call it like a 77 or a 78, and it's not going to be like a 23-year-old whiskey, but it's not going to be called the Glenmorangie 23. Unfortunately, it's going to have a whole different name. But thinking across the board, thinking that yes, Glenmorangie is who we're talking about tonight, whiskey. Overall, give me a number on overall taste. Now, speaking subjectively myself, for my own, even though the 10 didn't do it for me, and I would have gave it like a C, like a 3, 2.5, I'd say 2.5 star out of 5 kind of deal, a C level. But once you get to the La Santa and the Quinta Ruban and some of the parts of the core, I think it comes up to a nice, B plus A. That's just my own inkling. Some of the privates have been hit and miss for me. The Milchon, I would have gave like a C, but the Tussale I thought was really good. I gave it like an A minus. When it came to the Spias, I thought it was well done, spicy, almost like a rye. I'd say a solid B plus, A minus. The Astar, the one with the Missouri oak that they used. Really well done. I heard the newer one was much better than the old one. Never had a chance to try the old version, but the new one was solid for $100. I thought it was definitely a well worth it kind of a dram taste wise. So I think if I had to put it all, I wish I had more exposure to the really high end vintage stuff. I have had the 18. I've had the Signet, which are in their upper echelon, of what I would consider their core, at least. I just wish I could touch some of those 25s and 30s and 40-year-old versions of what they have. With that said, though, I'm leaning towards a really solid B to a B plus on taste, which would be kind of a 7 would be a B plus, A minus would be an 8. I'm thinking the 7 or 8 is where I was leaning on taste, but Lost Cause was thinking 5.5. Wow, he is not down with the Glenmorangie taste. So the hot to factor that in. That's that is a bit different. Trooper says he's had the 10, the 12, 14, 18 Nectar Noir, and I give it a solid 8 plus even on taste. Yeah. I've only had the core range, which is solid, probably around a 2.5. Oh, he's talking about the 2.5 for the Glenmorangie 10. So many mediocre products that's relatively available, totally average to me. Hmm. I guess the way I look at it might be a little different. I don't know. Let me get you to think of it this way, Lost Cause. There are like 200, I think. Let me do a new check of the count. For living distilleries at this point right now in time, there are 126 living distilleries in Scotland. We won't even talk about the probably 30 to 40 dead ones, but just thinking about the 126 living distilleries, factoring in things that you've had, and I'm talking the Avondurgs and the Glen Spays and the Glen Ords and the some of the off the wall stuff, the Taninics, the Tomnavulins. I'm not sure if hopefully some of you guys have been around the block a few times and have tried some of these newer and older distilleries to compare something like Glenmorangie to. With that said, I know that when you are thinking about the big boys like Macallan, like Laphroaig, anything from Diageo, basically, with the minus some other lesser known stuff that they use in blends, but even the Bunnahabhans and the Springbanks and the Balvanys. I mean, Balvenie and Tomatin and Anox. I mean, yeah, there's some good distilleries in there, but there's a ton that are not so good. So when you give this kind of score, I want you to think across the board for every distillery that's an option. If I give you the option of let me think, Auchentoshan, a Ben Nevis, I'm just picking randomly here, a Glendulin, a Jura, a Oban, and a Tumantul. What are you going to pick if I throw in Glenmorangie in there? What are you going to go for? That's what the way you have to kind of think about it when you're looking at the big picture of Scotch across the board. Do you still think it's that low? Is it still a 5.5? That's a little brutal. Trooper, you said 8. I gave it around an 8. What about you, Dram? Thanks for stopping by, man. N1, good to see you too. Since you're visible here, there are more than 10 watching, but with Dram and 1, throw a number for taste, 1 to 10, based off everything you've tried from the Glenmorangie distillery. What do you think that you would give it? And I want you to compare it to the Mortlocks and the Pultneys and then even the new stuff like the Kingsbarns or some Glenlossie, Glengoyne, Dalloween. So I think across the board, all these distilleries, and let me know 1 to 10 what you think. Let's go in for a nose on this guy. I've had it set out for definitely more than 14 minutes. So nice fruit. Oh man, that's a lovely nose. I don't see how anyone can't like that nose. It's deep, very deep, and it has a richness to it. It's those nice ruby red level fruits that are not overly light. We're not talking pears, white grapes, that stuff, or apples. We're talking more of the Mortlock is too damn expensive and overrated. And we'll definitely be getting to them. Jim says 7.5, and that's where I was leaning towards, was 7.5 to 8. I'll take the 8 and the 5.5 in there. 7-ish from Jason. Good to see you, Jason. Thanks for chiming in. 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10. This is out of 10 in that whiskey. 1 to 10. 10 being the absolute best thing you've ever tasted. 1 being the absolute most horrible, horriblest. Most horrible, yeah. Most horrible thing you've ever tasted. Maybe 6 to 7 is where I'll stay. And yeah, I don't blame you. 6 to 7, 5 point. It's kind of across the board. With that said, also you got to take into account not just subjective, part of it. You also have to look at is your wheelhouse in the Highlands? Are you just out of curiosity? I'm not trying to debate you guys or anything. I'm just trying to get a feel for where your score is coming from, possibly whiskey and Lost Cause. If where's your favorite region? Is it the Highlands, or is it somewhere else? I'm just curious because I kind of got to look at it that way. Core Range is fine. Signet is good. I've also had a few of the different Grand Vintages were also very good. That's what I was looking for. Someone that had that Grand Vintage experience, because that's the only thing I personally was lacking. Because I've had a lot of private editions. I've had definitely across the entire core up to the Signet, including the 18, but the Grand Vintages is where I was kind of iffy. And Dram gave it a solid 7.5, which, if you take account the low 5 and the higher 8, I think 7 to 7.5 is more of a fair score. Lost Causes, I think if Glenmorangie is rated at 7 or 8 taste, it's hard to make much room above it, and there's so much better. Oh man, that's a tough to me because I am a huge Isla/Campbelltown fanboy. Everyone knows it. But if I do take that step across to the Highlands, where do I want to go? Now, with the exception of maybe Ball Blair, I think's a Highland, right? Let me double check. Ball Blair is a Ball Blair, yeah, is a Highland. So that's another Highland. I would kind of equate them as quality, a good quality Scotch. Do I think they're better than Dalmore for taste? I'm sorry, but I think they are. I'm just thinking across, from the 12-15s, the equivalent 12 and 15s I've had from Glenmorangie, I like actually better. Let me look at some other big boys. Deanston is quality. Hard to beat them in that. Let me do a region. You kind of brought up something that I'm going to do it and expand and sort. And we're going to talk about relatively some of these other high, like Elberfeldy. I mean, come on. Elberfeldy cannot hang with Glenmorangie on taste. I'm sorry. There's just no way. Impossible. Sorry, Elberfeldy. I know some people might love you guys, but it's just not for me. Uh, let me see. I'm not even familiar with one of these Arbiki, I think it's a new distillery. To look more into that. Ardmore, it's usually used in blends, I believe. Not something. Ardmaturin is so new that they can't really hang it. Balber we already talked about. Benevis is solid on taste. Blair Athol, Royal Brockla, come on, they can't hang. Kleinlich can hang. I do like them. Dalmore, taste wise, sorry. Edredauer, pretty good, but I'm not sure if I'll put them in a powerhouse like Glenmorangie. But Lost Cause says their port cast blow Glenmorangie's away, and Edredauer's a nudge above for sure. I don't know, man. I do like the Edredauers I've had, though. I will hang with you there. Their 10 years really good. Their 12, their Balakin stuff is really good. So yeah, I see. I can see where you guys, because you do have the Glentronics, the Glen Sao, the Glenturrets, of course, the Old Pultneys and the Tomatins and the. I guess I would put them definitely above average, though. You got to agree with me that I wouldn't say they're down there with the first like 10 or so I mentioned. But yeah, they might not be, up there with some of those other guys. Let me do a Control Z to get back to where I was. But yeah, I think I'm going to lean towards the bottomish on 7. I think it's fair 7 on taste, because yeah, they might not be able to be as high as some of these that I've rated 8s and 9s on taste, but I still think they're pretty damn good. That's just my own self talking, and I've kind of put you guys together in a blender, and yeah, I'll go. Bendromic, I do agree with you. And Ben Reichs and Bendromics are very, very well done. That's why I'm putting them maybe a little above average, which 5 to 6, 7. I think is on the fair end. So we're gonna stick, I think, with the 7, unless someone's got is like, it's way too high. I think comparatively, somewhat, we're looking at. I think that's it's fair. It's not like I gave Kilhoman an 8.5. Kilhoman tastes pretty damn good across the board, but with that said, it's like it's definitely I'm sure they're going to get nicked in other categories, which we're going to get to here in a second. So there you go, right? All right, Glenmorangie 7 on taste. We'll say consistency. And when I say consistency, when you get that bottle of Kinta, the 12, is it consistently the same? If you get the 14 version, which we're in the middle of having a sip, hopefully here. Still great hazelnut. I see that slight bitter edge that I think it was Lost Cause pointed out. But see, I like the balance with the sweetness with it, and without that slight bitter note, that sweetness might be a little more, too assertive. But I'm gonna let it linger on the finish for a bit, because I get more of a savory note overall than overly sweet or overly bitter. I think it kind of comes in with that real just solid grapey, dry, but lingering taste. It's good. I do know what you're talking about, man. I'll have to come back to that and see if it takes it down at all. But Lost Cause will commend them on being consistent. And that is the thing. No matter if you love it or hate it, when you get a bottle of the 10 or the Lasanta, and even when you play around, I know certain bottles have higher ABVs than others when it comes to an American audience versus, I think, European. I think they have a 43. We'll talk about value in a second there, Trooper. Actually, that's near the end. When you look at their slight differences, even, they're still pretty damn consistent, I'd say, overall, which I do have to bump them up on. Anybody have any issues with consistency on the taste? I'm just curious. It's great value. Bought the 14 for $42. That is a great value, because the 14 here is a bit more than $42, my friend. I was just looking at this earlier. It's $60 here, man. $59.99. So that's a heck of a deal. 7 seems about right to me. Are you talking consistency there, Whiskey? I'm gonna have to bump them up definitely on a 7 on consistency. I was leaning more towards a 9, because Lost Cause thought that was probably something he would throw. Trooper's saying more of an 8, 9 for Lost Cause, 8 for Whiskey. Were you talking about 7 for taste, or was that for consistency? Just clarify that for me. I'm definitely leaning towards a higher number, I think, at this point. And Dram, throw your number in there too, what you think consistency wise. And especially think of those grand vintages for me. Are they, if you were lucky enough to have more than one, or if you did have a set of 3, even if they were different, were they all the same reasonable quality, which would make them consistently good? That bitter is from the base malt. You see, I thought it might be that bitterness might be from the edge of the port cask, but I'm not going to debate you on that, because the chord to me is almost overly cereal-like. I'm not sure what the word for it is, but you know what I'm talking about. Unless the alcohol is astringent, yeah. Maybe that's all sweetness from the port cask. You could be right. I have to go back and try the Glenmorangie Flat 10. It's been a while, but I do know that I was not a huge fan of that just base juice. But I love this Lasanta, and I love the Quinta Ruban. Hmm. I guess that's what took me to really like this one, is to get rid of that base mineral note of the tin and give it a little more sweetness with the port. But I would expect it in the 12 too if it was the distillate, yeah. And it should be in both. It should be the same. So you're onto something there. Yeah, I'm thinking we're gonna go 8.5 for consistency. Um, yeah, one just said it too. I think that's a pretty damn fair score, because you know what you're gonna get, and yeah, there might be an occasional, but I mean the only difference I think would come if the ABV might be different on a country or continent, I should say, bottling, or if they have it a couple more years in the port cask, that might throw the consistency off. But that's not really fault of the distillery. I'm just talking like their 14s to 14s, their 12s to 12s, their 10s to 10s. Are they all the same? And I think 8.5 is pretty fair. Let's think variety, guys. Now this is where I think they shine. Um, Bringing up just glancing through, I'll talk some about the ones that I've had. We've already talked about the core original 10, the Kinturban, the old 12, the new 14, the La Santa 12, the Nectar Noir 12, which is their Sauterne steel. Um, that is their core pretty much. In the 18, I should throw that into their core. That's and I don't know if technically if the Signet's part of their core. It might as well be, because it's usually pretty much every liquor store I've ever been to has a bottle of Signet somewhere. It's crazy. And not even talking about their Grand Vintage slash also known as the 70s collection. That's the other one I was thinking about that I wish I had more involvement with. Las Casas, they don't have a peated version in many cask strengths or single barrels. They actually, I think they have at least one peated. Maybe you're right about that. Yeah, they do have the single Highland Rare, which was a peated offering. It's an old one. It's an 18-year-old. It's very old. It was an oak cask type, 43%. I think it's fairly rare. I think it was from the 90s. So yeah, I mean, but that's a kind of a technicality. You're right. They really don't have a readily available peated single malt, which you do have to ding them one variety for. At least not trying. I don't expect every Scotch distillery to have a great peated line, because sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I'm definitely can vouch for that. With the ones I've had, some of them are good, some of them are horrible. But give it a college try, right? What do you have to lose when you just run a 300 bottle craft series, kind of like what Springbank does? I would think that they could get a smaller still process and just run something to see if they could do it or not. And again, Lost Cause has got a good point, guys. They don't. Let me see if these Grand Vintage with the ABV 43. Yeah, that's low. Let me see if some of these the collection editions from the 70s, 43%. Wow, are they always 43%? 46% on this one. Um, 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 um. Now I could have sworn I had a higher ABV. I'm not sure if it was what I would call a cask strength, but I could have sworn I had, 52.2 on the Astar. That was the 2017 edition. Astar. Let me see what this one is. 57.1. So that's cask, pretty much cask strength, I would say. Uh, I mean, I guess you can't call it cask strength though, because they probably semi-lightly diluted it from 60 something down to 57. So technicality, I guess you could ding them that way. And a lot of their private editions are 46. So yeah, man, that's a tough one. See, the cask strength though, I'm gonna put that more into the craft process than the actual. Well, it does tie into the variety too, though. Man, they might get. I might have to slightly, like 1 point ding them for that in those areas if they don't have that. What's the ABV on the Signal? It's only 46. Damn. Okay. Well, I guess 10 is probably good on ice, but it needs time to open up a little. I would recommend it to a new Scotch drinker. And yeah, that's what I was going to get to on. I didn't want to feel like I was bashing their core 10. It is great for, one of my friends, I gave him a drink of it. He was the one that actually got it for me. It was a gift. And later down, after I had half the bottle in return, he was over for like a visit, and I was like, "Hey, here's a glass of it," and he thought it was okay. It wasn't anything off-putting about it. And if you never had Scotch before, it is a good entry in the door thing. Variety none for whiskey, 7 for taste, 8 for consistency. Yeah, I think you're on the right path on those. For variety, he's seeing as high as 9, but I think I might have to lower just a smidgen only because of the cask strength not being of good availability there, and as Lost Cause, uh, no peated versions, single barrel type offerings. That does hurt your variety, so it's going to take them down from a 9, I think, to an 8. I think that's fair. They do have a good variety, and it's way above average, which is, average being 5 to 6. 7's a bit low, but 9 is way too high because they don't have those things. I might even think about 7.5. 7.5 for the variety because of, peated, single barrel, cask strength options. That's 3 big categories. A lot of us more what I would consider connoisseurs, what we want to try. We're interested in what you got to offer and giving it a good go. Why not? All right. With that said, let's look at age statements. And it's a bit drawing for my taste, but it's a port cask. It should be, yeah, they have more variety than quite a few. That's why I thought 7's too low. 8.5 is definitely too high with all those missing. So I thought 7.5, I think, is a fair across the board score for them. Because I gave Glen Scotia a 6, and because they don't really have that kind of stuff either. It's I think it's relative. Age statements. Think about age statements for a second. But yeah, the little dry, but port cask, it's to be expected, but it's a good dram. I still think overall I appreciate it for the balance. I know that Lost Cause wasn't as into it because of the minerality or the bitter note he's getting, which I do agree it's there. For me, it actually helps balance out the overall taste of it, and I do love a sweet Scotch. But I think it fine tunes and rounds it out. So I think I'd still give this one I'm not sure if I go as high as a 4, 3.75 out of 5. I was thinking more than fair if I stick to 3.75. I'm edging toward a 4, but the 2 Sail I do like better overall taste, and it's sweeter. So I might have to stick to my guns, but definitely worth seeking out. It's a beautiful dram, way above average. A lot of core ages 18 and down for sure. Well, that's the thing when you look at age age statements. They really do. They have a 10. That's okay, dram. I know how it goes. So far, where taste was a 7 out of 10. Consistency was an 8.5 out of 10, and variety overall was a 7.5 out of 10 because of the lack of peated options, cask strength options, and single barrel options. So I think Lost Cause brought some really good intel on that one. I really appreciate the recon, by the way. Age statements, they do have a solid 10 core. They've got the 12 Lasanta, the Kinta Bond 14. They have an 18. Now, even though they do have a good core and they do have 4 solid beginning to intermediate Scotch drinking, options for age statements, they change it up when you get to what they call their Grand Vintage series, which is like a 1993. It's first 10 years in ex-bourbon barrels, then finished out in Madeira cask for 15 years, which I'm assuming if it's finished totaling 15, it'd be 5 years in this Madeira cask from their core 10. So it's a 15-year statement in a way, even though they don't really give it as part of the name, which really blows my mind in this day and age. I bet you're going to see some changes from Glenmorangie in that regard, because if you've noticed, the whiskey collective is listening to a lot of the reviewers saying that you guys should put some more age statements out. Look what Highland Park did with their travel retail exclusives. They've had 14s and 16s, and they've got a new twisted tattoo, which is like I think it was a 19. I can't remember the age on it. Surprisingly lower price too. I couldn't believe it, but I haven't tried it yet, so I'm not going to say it's great, but we'll see what happens. But regardless of all that, let's look at some of these other ones. It looks like some of these Grand Vintages are technically NASs. They don't really specify. Let me see about this collection. They got a Glenmorangie 1970s collection, 1977, for example. It's a 21-year age on September 11th, 1998, and including a 28-year-old release in 2005. Wow. So they've got different ones that are your 20-something ages. Now, are these NASs? No, because they do state the age, even though it's not like plastered. But I bet you they'll change the name to just a Glenmorangie flat 28 or 25 or whatever it is. I would think that they would start doing that, but I can't really ding them for that, I guess, if they do have these as options. So I think I'll have to give them a decent score for the statements. Let's go with do they really get above the 30s? Has anyone seen 16 on the twisted tattoo? Thanks, Dram, for Highland Park. We were talking about that a little earlier. What do you guys think? Have you ever seen a 30-year-old Glenmorangie or higher? And even though they have a great core up to intermediate Scotch offering, age statement wise, they should have more for a lot of you higher end buyers. You Stephen Connors, you Dram dudes out there that have a little more of this to throw down on a bottle. You guys might be able to afford a 30, 40, 50-year-old that they have. Has anyone ever heard of Glenmorangie having that as an offering? If not, they should get dinged a little bit on that. So I'm leaning towards an 8, unless someone thinks that's a little too high. Whisky thinks 8's fair. I'm not sure if he was talking about variety, but we're on age statements now. I'm thinking 8 on age statements because they're missing the higher tier stuff, but they do have from the 10s to the 20s pretty good representation, is the word I'm thinking of. What do you guys think of it? Just let me stew on that a little bit while I'm thinking about availability. This is a tough one. On the age statements. But unless you guys say otherwise, I think we're going to stick with that. Anyway, let's go to availability. Now, when I think availability, let's see here. Dram says, I don't think they have a regular, have those age statements. They need to go for Grand Vintage or Glenmorangie Pride for the old stuff. Yeah, and that's the thing. And those are, I think, typically are below 30 on the age statement. An age statement, yeah. I think we'll stick to that. Let's go to availability, guys. When I think availability, I think of two different factors. Yes, I think about liquor stores, but I also think about the bar. Now, thankfully for Glenmorangie, I have been able to get it at the bar, and I have been able to get it at the liquor store. And any liquor store I've been to, smaller and pop places up to the big boys, they usually have at least, they always have the 10, they always have the La Santa, they always have a Quinta Ruban. Sometimes they might have an 18 or a Signet, but typically they do have the entire core. And they even have like one or two of the current private editions, and sometimes even a couple of the older dusty ones if you're lucky to find. That's how I found a Milchon and a Two Sail. Even those are from back in like I think 2005 and 6 or something. I'm sorry, I'm going way too far back. 2015, 2016, that area. Um, you can still find these on the shop, on the shelves sometimes, and they're hit or miss. Like I said, love the Two Sail, wasn't that into the Milchon, love the Spias, really like the Astar. So, there's some good ones, but I mean, the availability is pretty much, I think, there. It's hard to really nick them on that. The bar situation's iffy sometimes at the Nectar Noir and maybe a La Santa I've seen. But they even in restaurants, I've found them relatively, regularly, I should say, available. What do you guys think on that? Is 8 too high for availability? I think they're pretty available. I'm not sure if I go as far as a 9 because there are places that I haven't seen them, but extremely available, like Whisky says, for core stuff at the bar and at the store. So I think an 8, 8.5 even is fair. I'm leaning towards an 8, but let me see. Yeah, we'll see. We might have to come back to that score and see what we think. Value. Now, Trooper definitely has a lot of comments with regard to the value of the Glenmorangie distillery, I've noticed. Overall, bang for the buck there, Trooper. What do you think? Whiskey got the sampler on clearance. Lost Cause says 8.5 because their high end is rarely carried even in Scotch bar. Yeah, no, I'm thinking even lower. I'm thinking down to an 8 there, Lost Cause. I'm thinking I'm sticking to that because yeah, I mean, I don't see any of their the stuff that Dram's been able to get. It's not even for sale in the stores around here, unfortunately. Yeah, it helps when you're an LVMH company. That's true. Yeah, that's what I mentioned before you came on board, Dram, about Louis Vuitton and Moet Tennessee, I think is how you say it. Them being, they picked two pretty damn good distilleries, Ardbeg and Glenmorangie, to run, and thank God they're not running them to the ground. But value bang for the buck, even though the core is not really the 10's not really something that I would throw money at. $30 for entry level Scotch is pretty damn well priced. Well, a Santa is a great price. I rarely ever see that above $55. Let me see right now. I'm gonna throw some prices out to you guys in Maryland. Think about it relatively to what you get, and tell me what you think the value should be. Now, for a 10 here is $36.97. That's pretty specific, but it's $36.97. Their 18 is $99.99. Pretty damn good price for an 18-year-old Scotch, but it's one of those 18-year-olds that some people like it a lot. Some people are kind of like, eh. I'm in kind of like the middle ground where I see the good things about it, but it could be better for an 18. But relative to the price for $100, I mean that's a pretty well priced 18 when you look at a Dalmore 18 and it's $200 and something. But I guess sometimes you do say you get what you pay for. I don't know. The Alta, which is their new private edition, 110. The Star, the one I was talking about, that was that Missouri Okie one. That's $100. The Bacalta 110, La Santa $50. Now a 12-year-old Scotch for $50 that tastes damn good. To me, that's high value. That's high value. The Nectar Noir is $70 for a Sauternes cask finish. No age statement specifically, but I would be surprised if it's under 12 years old. I think it might be. Is that a 12-year-old statement on the Nectar Dwar? Let me know if guys, if you know for sure. A 14-year-old statement for $60. $60. I think that's a pretty damn good value for a 14-year-old that tastes better than a Dalmore 15 to me. I mean, that's just from my palate. Um, and of course, when you get up to the Signet, that's 189, so 190, we'll say. I have seen it as high as 210, 220. I think that's too much for what you're getting. The 190-ish price, I think, is a lot fair, more, fair. The Delmar 18, you pay for the difference of caramel coloring they had to use. Are you Swami in disguise? That's cool if you are. Don't reveal your identity if that's you, Swami. Anyway, but that's a good one. I like that. Everyone, good to see you, man. Good to see you. I shared an Aaron 16 with everyone recently. He works locally here with me in DC. Go Nats! They're probably losing. Oh, it's 2-2. They're tied up, man. I hope they can come together and make this happen. But anyway, I get sidetracked. Everyone, like me, wasn't a huge fan. Appreciate some notes out of it. The Aaron 16. They don't make it anymore for probably a good reason. I think they've redid their line and they have some new stuff coming from what I've heard. But I love this Kinterbon 14, and I'm real technically picky about port casks. A lot of Islay people don't do it. The only good Islay ones I've had is the port cask matured Lafroig. It's the 2013 Carriages and the Lafroig Brodier. That is a great port cask, but man, Kilhoman didn't do it for me. Glendronach doesn't do it for me with the peated portwood. Trying to think. The Springbanks were good. They can pull off a port cast, but it's hit or miss. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones I've had where it was a complete miss. I've had a couple that were just not there. I don't know what it is. These take a long time to sit out to really, I think, get appreciated. $41 for 12-year, $42 for 14-year. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat the value. So what do you think value-wise, guys, 1 to 10? Monroe red port. I gotta try that. Yeah, port casts don't typically wow me. I'm with Dram on this. Hey, but Dram, have you had the new 14 Kinterbon, and what did you think of it overall? I think it's pretty good especially for what it is. Yeah, Aaron 14, everyone liked a lot better than the 16. Not a fan of the Kinterbon as much. Don't like the wine finish. But the Lasanta's pretty good. 10 is a great value. Grant was disappointed by the 18, even at $100. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, that the people love or hate the Glenmorangie 18. It's kind of one of those weird hit or miss kind of drams. I don't think it's a consistency thing, because they're usually pretty damn consistent on their bottling. I think it's just one of those flavor profile combinations where you got to be in the mood for that. And I've had it and enjoyed it, and I've had it where I didn't enjoy it so much. No, I haven't had it yet. Well, Dram, if since you're like me, you're really picky to find that port wine cask that does wow you, I think it's definitely worth a shot at $60 here in Maryland. Maybe even cheaper. You might be able to find it for $50 there in California. Hey, Ryan, good to see you stop by, man. Thanks, I appreciate it. We're talking about value overall, 1 to 10 for Glenmorangie. What do you think? I think it's across the board. I'm leaning towards an 8.5 for value, because they are very rarely ever overpriced. The Signet is the only one that I'm kind of like, oh man, I don't know. The 18, even for its level of complexity being as simple as it is, $100. It's lower. It's actually even lower price than their private editions, which are probably equivalent to like a 15-year-old dram. So that's kind of, I don't know. Maybe the 18 just doesn't have a lot of cask influence. I have to look that up actually. Let's see what do they do with their 18. I am curious now that I'm thinking about it. Glenmorangie 18. I don't have it memorized, unfortunately. Ex-bourbon and ex-Oloroso sherry. So the 18 years aged for 15 years in the ex-bourbon, and then a third of this is finished in the ex-sherry cask, while the remaining continue to mature in the barrels until all of the whiskey is at least 18. I think that's where they go wrong. I bet you that's where they go wrong and why it's not really a big favorite. Because like myself, I would have preferred if they take the 18 year, take the 15 years in exclusive, ex-bourbon casks and take the full amount and go to the ex-sherry even. First fill sherry would be perfect. But we can't be too choosy. They probably charge us 150 to $200 for it then. But I'm willing to pay, 130, 150 for an 18-year-old if it's got more influence in it. So yeah, I get almost no sherry notes in the 18. They must be very tired sherry barrels. I'll agree with you there. It's kind of sad, but if they took that 15 year in the ex bourbon, took the full 3 years in the ex sherry instead of just a third of it, which is a small amount, it's kind of a no brainer. I guess there's just I don't know, a certain profile they're trying to hit. I just don't see why you'd want to go that. I guess that maybe they're afraid of too much sherry exposure, shutting off a lot of their big ex-bourbon cask fans. But I don't know. But that's the way I think they could fix it. Dr. Bill isn't a big fan of sherried whiskey. Oh, that makes sense. When he says Dr. Bill, he's talking about the head guy, kind of like the Mickey heads of Ardbeg. He's like the head guy over at does their deal, master distiller, I think is the word I'm looking for, over at Glenmorangie. So that makes sense. If he's not a fan of sherry, I mean, the shame of it is he's got one of the best ones with the La Santa, even though it's just a 12-year-old whiskey. It's one of my favorite sherry influenced whiskeys. I hate to say it, but if you give me a Macallan 12 or a La Santa, I'm probably going to go for the La Santa just because it's got to me, it's got a more real fruit, strawberry, raspberry preserves kind of flavor to it. And it has a stronger sherry influence. Yeah. I mean, it's a badass whiskey. I mean, it's weird that the guy that doesn't have the appreciation for what he has, he makes some of the best stuff. As soon as it's a very, really rich sherry. So they know how to do it. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good taste too. Not worth, I think, a couple $100, but maybe 180 if you can find the signet. Pull the trigger for about 180 to 190 at the top. I'd say don't go above the 190 if you can help it, and if you do your research, you can find it for under that. Anyway, let's go back. Anybody have a value number overall that they want to give the distillery as far as bang for the buck? I didn't see any numbers, so I'm going to have to put my own stamp on it. Definitely above a 7. I'm leaning towards an 8. Let's see. 8.5, is that over generous? No, because they are very well priced. Even if you're not a fan of some of their 18s, the signets and stuff, 8.5 for value, I think, is a bit fair. Yeah, I think I might have to stay with that. All right, finally. I love the smell of this. And it tastes pretty damn good too. For a 50, flat $60 14-year whiskey, I'd say it's pretty good. Signet is all American oak, interestingly. Huh. That is interesting. 8 for value. Yeah, 8+ for value for Trooper. Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with 8.5. So let's think about craft, guys. When I say craft, I do think of, part of that is having that cask strength, availability, which they don't have, unfortunately. I might have to ding them slightly. They already lost their 10. They're down to a 9 for craft. But I also look at chill filtering and coloring as part of that craft process. Do they do their own bottling like Springbank? Do they do their own floor malting? Don't think they do in these parts. But they do have some interesting stills from what I remember. That's one thing I have to do a little more quick research with. I think one of these guys has the tallest. Are these the guys with the tallest stills? I know some of you guys have it memorized. Let me know in the comments. Let's see. Yeah, 26 feet tall. I think they do have some of the most different stills. And then I like the fact that they are not afraid of Dram Dude's ready for a dram. What should he pour? Oh man, let's see. Let's think of something while we're studying up on the production of Glenmorangie. I was about to just say that they're not afraid to use the different cask types, like the ones that they used in the Ozark Mountains of Missouri to do the Astar. They mess around with Jack Daniels and Heaven Hill to do the mature bourbon. They seem to have a rare limited edition. Some of the casks are previously used to make a mature Chateau Margaux. These bottlings are now extremely hard to find and priced accordingly. Ooh. Looks like they have. With that said, I think they do unfortunately color. Does anyone know for certain? Preferably if you live in Germany. I don't think Hoagie Bear's here tonight, unfortunately. But to think about that. Now for Dram, are you feeling any particular region that you're feeling the most akin to tonight? That would help me give you a pick. Just off my head, if I was going to throw something. They do not color. Okay, good. I was hoping they didn't. I didn't think this was colored because being a port cask, if they were going to throw color in here, you think it would be a lot brighter. I'm sorry, darker if they were going to throw color in that. And it's a reasonable color for a 14-year-old port cask whiskey, I'd say. So I'm not surprised. It's just weird they don't really specify on the bottle about coloring, which is really weird because typically if you don't say it, you spray it. No, if you don't say it, typically you're guilty. So they really experiment. Well, they seem like they did with the a lot of the private editions. Their Lost Cause. I disagree with you on that. I mean, the Tussail, Machan, some of those are basically every year they get to play with something in some sort of cask influence. Well, the 12 was darker. Oh, interesting. I guess the 12 was darker because maybe it was just the casks were less used. I'm sure these are reused. They're not forced for the. I can't even say it. They're not first fill port casks, but I don't know. Hopefully, they're not overly used. Still good taste, but anyway, let me go and see on their. Because sadly, they don't really talk about even down to their core color or chill filtering. Maybe since it's LVMH, they just say a blanket statement across the board. They don't do coloring or chill filtering on anything. But I'd be surprised it's not plastered somewhere where you can easily see it. I don't have a box readily available outside of this guy. Let's see. Oh, not chill filtered. They do state around the box. Never mind. I guess that was enough for them to make you think that you wouldn't bother coloring it. So why in the world would we, if we don't chill filter it, why in the world would we bother coloring it? Maybe that's why they don't really specify. But we'll get a bump up for craft for that then, definitely, if they don't throw a bunch of coloring and chill filtering in the process. Now natural is what we want, pretty much. Only one a year, though. Good point, but I mean, I'm trying to think how to explain it. When you compare Glenmorangie to a distillery like, trying to think of a good example. Oh man, I guess the lack of variety is what's hurting them a little bit, maybe with some of that. But yeah, it's that's a tough one. What I like about Glenmo, good value, good selection from different expressions, consistent taste, and they do have some nice NES expressions. That's basically what I've looked at with just these scores. And if you're not following along, you can look at these discussions, the spreadsheets publicly available. You guys can see it real time. Yeah, 7 on taste, 8.5 on consistency, 7.5 on variety, 8 on age statements, 8 on availability, 8.5 on value. Craft, I'm going to have to give them a bump because of the that's just the fact that they don't do the whole coloring thing and all that. I can't give them a 9 though because of the unfortunate fact that they don't have some of the casks the availability of some of that stuff. I think overall, I think craft, I'm going to give them an 8. They don't do their own bottling and floor malting like Springbank. I mean, Springbank was a close 10. It was like a 9.5 on craft, so it definitely can't come to that close. 8, I think, is a fair score for them. And I think they sit proudly really close to a B plus to an A minus across the board, which I think is fair. I'm debating on whether to lean more towards the B plus or the A minus, but I'm thinking that I'm going to give them a B plus because can they hang way up there with some of these Lafroig and like Springbank are like the top quality distilleries I can think of. Bunnahaven is up there as well, but they're pretty along, I think, along with a Kalila or with a Kilhoman, Glen Scotia. I think they're that caliber, which is not an insult by any means. They're way above average, which is kind of where I thought it was going to end up on the scoring wise. And that makes sense. What we're going to talk about now is we're going to have a little fun with some blends. They do experiment quite a bit, actually. We just see a release once a year. Yeah. What I like about, I'm sorry, we already went to that one. 7 in craft for Lost Cause. Yeah. Anybody else have a different number than an 8 or a 7 for the craft aspect? They do their own special barrels of the Astar from that. Yeah, mainly just the same mass production. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I thought a 7. Sorry, an 8 was kind of in line, but overall they average out to about a 7.93, which is about it's a very high B, like a B plus plus, almost an A minus. Oh, well, thanks so much, everyone, for stopping by. 7.5, yeah. All right, well, if I got a 7, a 7.5, and an 8, 7.5 is pretty much in the middle. It'll lower them down just a smidgen, but they're still a 7.86, which is a solid B plus. Not bad, not shabby at all, and well worth your, to make a long story short, well worth a look overall. We've went into a lot of what's out there that they offer. Some of the ones you got to be kind of wary about, like the 18-year-old, maybe get that at a expo or a sample first before you go all in on a bottle. The other ones I think are very, 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 very well priced, where you don't have to really invest a whole lot and then get the a good bottle, no matter what you get, really, even down to their cheaper stuff. So with that said, Also, on the discussions on the channel, there's another spreadsheet you can take a look at, and this is actually editable by everybody. Uh, I've got one for blending, and on the side, I have decided to try and a little experiment with a little bottle here. You might be familiar with, you might not be familiar with the distillery or the bottle or anything about it. But this is another Highland distillery. I believe it's pronounced Tinninik, but I could be wrong, or Tinninik. I'm not quite sure. If you are a Gaelic speaker, please correct me in the comments later on or during the live show. Either way is fine with me. But it's a little bottle that I got just to, been trying all the distilleries, and DHS is not here tonight. I was hoping to get his take. I noticed that he had a look-see at their Distiller's Edition and was not a huge fan, but he knows their profile. Just to give you a heads up on the profile here that that I got out of this, I'm going to tell you what I got, and tell me what you think would go with it. And I'm going to give you a few options as far as doing a little blend. There's no legs to speak of, but I doubt there is any added color because it's just kind of a real flat, color for a tin. This is their flora and fauna bottling. This is a distillery that's used primarily for Johnny Walker Red from Diageo. To give you kind of a background, it's subtle woodiness, vanilla, ginger, lemon, tea, white grapes, and a ton of floral properties. Unfortunately, it's not drawing me in for a taste. That was all on the nose. This doesn't draw me in for a taste because it's outside of the scope of what I usually enjoy, but let's try it anyway. The palate is delicate with an oily mouth coat to me. Not maybe as heavy, oily as a Kleinlich, but oilier than lots of scotch. It has a slight honey, sourdough, a little bit of mineral, a bit of mint, very slight, very, very slight smoke and cream aspect to it. It's not bad. It just doesn't do it for me. I need a bit more sherry or peat or something that go along with this. The finish is long, buttery, and ends with some more honey, oranges, and rinds, which are redeeming qualities. It's a bit of a roller coaster. This is the single malt version before it gets blended in with other things to make Johnny Walker Red. So I'm not saying this is tastes like Johnny Walker Red, but it is the most used whiskey in that blend from what I understand. So I usually try to blend something with it. With that said, with that spreadsheet I was talking about, if you pull it up, it's got some experiments we've already done in the field. Myself, I tried to do, and you can see on the left side, it's got the whiskey. I tried to blend a Lefroy 10 cask strength with a new Glenmorangie 12. Well, I thought it might work. Unfortunately, I forgot the Glenmorangie 12 has two different sherry types. It's got Oloroso and PX in it, which did not jive well with the profile of the iodine TCP part of the 10 cask strength from Lefroy. So it was a iffy decent. The spreadsheet is, if you go to the channel, Dram, pull up the channel on the side and go to the discussions. And under discussions, you should see a link for the blending. And it is editable by you guys. I even have a Dram Dude column ready to go for you. And I've got a little legend key at the bottom where highlight in yellow if you thought it was iffy, but it's decent. And it was just an iffy decent. I don't think the Oloroso played very well with the Lefroy. The PX, I think, works, hence the PX cask that they do for their travel retail market. They don't really play with Oloroso sherry, maybe for that reason, because they already understand it doesn't work with the profile. You don't see anything. Let me go and try to guide you. I'm going to pull up, I'm just going to go to youtube.com. I'm going to go to my channel. At the very, very top, it's got a button that says discussion. And then there's three things in the comments. There's a total of 5 comments. And the first one, you might have to, oh, you do see it. There you go. We'll have to clear it. Had to change the sorting. Gotcha. All right, and then just pull that baby up there, and let me close out of this. There we go. And highlighted in red if it's like a completely stay away from it. It's horrible. Don't ever try this. It's just bad. Green, light green, pretty good. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's definitely one that you should try on your own because that person really enjoyed it. And finally, if it's dark green, awesome sauce. That means it's like really well done. And DHS really, really liked a combination, and you can see it here on the spreadsheet, specifically a Glenlivet Nadura 16-year-old with a Glenlivet Nadura Oloroso, 50-50. Put the percentages of what you did. If you have to repeat this whiskey to get the three together to do the color combo, that's fine. I understand. This is kind of a work in process. I'm sure there's a better way to do a database that makes this work, but I'm not a database guy. If you know how to make this better, by any means, please tell me, and I'd be happy to go in and do whatever, or create something, or help create something that keeps track of these types of things. It would be awesome, basically, to have a shared whiskey recipe list of things that actually work. So I added myself the Lefroy 10 cask strength, the present Glenmorangie 12, 80% of that, 20% of the cask strength. So the profiles just didn't work. He loved that one. It looks like Swami decided to do an old version of the Glenmorangie 12. This would be, pre-Brown-Forman era. That's why I put old on there with a couple asterisks. And also a Lagavulin 8, 20% of that, 80% of the Glenmorangie 12 old. He really, really liked it. Pretty good, he said. Now, somebody, Gawkin, who's a regular on the show usually, I haven't seen him tonight so far, but he tried a Glenfarclas 17 and then Kilchoman Sinag. Now, to me, that sounds fantastic. I like the savory aspects of Sinag. Some people don't like it. I understand. Some people, that's like their least favorite Kilchoman. But for me, it's, if I'm in the mood for a Longmorn 16, a savory, spicy dram, I'll go for that. And Glenfarclas 17's beautiful, sulfuric, little funk, really well balanced taste. Dram 80% of that with a little hint of that savoriness. I could see how that could work, but he didn't color code it yet. I'm going to have to try to get a hold of him to come in and color code the way he felt about it based on that legend at the bottom. So when you get a chance, if you guys do decide to give something a try, please pop it in here. I'm going to do one tonight. So I'm going to add a link here. Now, if anyone else is adding stuff here where I'm doing this, it could freak it out. So please, if you do have things you want to add or fill in and save, please do it after the show at some point. Try to spread it out if you don't mind, because I don't know how the multiple people in the same spreadsheet, how that's going to work. So I'm going to add one here. We're going to do, I'm going to try to boldface all these so they kind of stand out. There we go. I'm going to do Tinnick. It's a lot of I-N's in this name. I'm sorry, it's an N-I-C-H. I always mess that up. 10-year-old. And this time, instead of another whiskey, which this is an option, you don't have to pick whiskeys for this. I've got a couple different options. I can either try an Oloroso sherry, which is good, or I could try same brand, just a PX version of sherry. I've mixed this before, and both do well in different circumstances. Or I could go back to the Glenmorangie 14 and give it a little port kind of a feel, but I don't know. Now, with the tasting notes that I told you guys, which, it's been a while, I know, but lots of florals, light fruits, ginger, vanilla, that kind of thing, with the mint, sourdough, slight mineral, very slight smoke, a little bit touch of cream. What would go well balance-wise to work with that Tinnick 10? There's got to be something. Would you go for the PX? Would you go for the Oloroso? Or would you go for the port? And tell me why in the chat if you don't mind. Trooper says McKellen 18 and Glenlivet 18, 50-50 blend, both pre-1990 bottling. Very interesting. Well, when I'm out of the spreadsheet here after the show, if you don't mind, Trooper, go ahead and add those two and put a color coat on it. If you have to change the text to white to make it stand out for the darker color, that's fine for the dark green. The other colors should be fine with black lettering. But definitely throw it in there, and because that's the only way I can keep track of what you guys like. Because it's funny how I'll be on a show with, if it's Scotch for Dummies, Scotch Test Dummies, Swami Show, Malta Man Cave, any of those guys. If you're ever watching, I'm sure you get tons of people that will occasionally say, hey, I tried this and it was outstanding. But unless you're jotting this stuff down, you're never going to memorize it. So let me know. And if you guys don't have any ideas of what would go best, I'll have to try to have my own hypothesis and give it a guess at what would work. The mint in the sourdough makes it really tough. I'm leaning towards a really good sweetness, because for mint, sweetness works with it. With floral properties and stuff like that, really light fruit. That, though, goes real well with the Oloroso. But the mint with Oloroso, it's more savory. I don't think that would really work. What do you guys think? Port cask could work. I could split this up into two different pours. I'm gonna finish off this one. I might split this dram into two. This is the Tinnick 10 before any additives. Really just nice, straightforward gold straw color. Not much to speak of, though. I'm really the Oloroso might work because that profile kind of reminds me of the Tomaten Decades. Was one of those drams where it had a little bit of everything. It even had some really good herbal notes going on, and it really hit the spot. It was really well done. Ryan's saying maybe the Oloroso try first because of the floral citrus notes. For what it's worth, yeah, it might be worth a gamble with that. What do you think, PX versus port, Ryan? Would you rather see that profile go up with a PX or a port? The port just that works with mint, so I mean that aspect it should be fine. The minerality might screw with it, though. That's where I'm kind of like, I'm not quite sure if I want to go all the way there or not. That's a toughie. What do you guys think? Well, while you're thinking, let's since you did the Oloroso and you're on a run, we're gonna try it. Even though I haven't even opened it up this one yet. Their PX is really good. I will say that. So I think their Oloroso would be up there too. Whoa. And this does have a nice cork. This is not a cheap, this is not cheap sherry. It's not crazy expensive either, but it's, I'd say it's reasonable. When you're doing this, if you're not very seasoned, if you're not experienced, use an eyedropper. It does not take much at all, and we're talking like eye drops to make a difference. Big fan of both. The port is more difficult to get right, maybe. Yeah. So maybe we'll do a PX and a Oloroso just for fun. So let me start off with, I'm going to do a slight tip, and I'm talking like eye drop piece for the for one dram, and we're going to do the other one. We're going to do the same thing with the PX. and see the differences. If either one is, good, better than the other for whatever reason. I'm going to keep the glasses with the bottle so I don't get them mixed up, because that would be bad if I did mess those up. Let's see. Gotta definitely do this a certain way so you don't get too much in there, because you will pay for it if you put too much sherry in one of these deals. I'm telling you, it does not take much at all. It's extremely strong. People usually, some people like to drink sherry straight, but it usually doesn't work out that way. It's so sweet. This one little sip of this stuff will change the direction of a dram. So I guess that was the PX. Let me get this in the right area here. So let me start with the Oloroso. Usually if you're going to do a tasting, you want to start off with your dry slash savory stuff first, then go towards your more spicy or sweeter stuff middle, and then end it with a peated offering last. If you don't do it that way, you will pay for it in every expo VIP offering that you ever go to. Trust me, I've been there, done that a billion times, and it makes a huge difference. So you're not only going to see any color differences here, because I'm not using very much. I'm just using enough to give it a little difference. And here's the key, guys. You can always add more. You can never really take it out. Once it's added, that's it. You can't go back. So be really careful, especially if you are playing around with a one of these higher end bottles. Like some of you guys like to blend, 25-year-old Springbank. I saw somebody put that in here. Blended I don't think anyone's going to be blending that anytime soon, but maybe they will. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I don't think I added Springbank 25, but it's possible. I think I do get a little more savory note off the nose, at least already. A little sweetness, but definitely more of a edgy sherry. It's good. Can I handle some more though? Maybe. I think it can handle a little touch more of the Oloroso. I think I got my PX pour pretty good, but this one I think I didn't really do it much justice. Let me see if I can get a little bit more in there. Because, it's an experiment. You have to play around with this to get it just right. Wish Slogness was on tonight. Usually I see him win. He might not have known we were going live. I missed a last Tuesday, the Tuesday before. I've been going through some pain lately, but I didn't want to miss the show of. But I'm okay. I'm making do. No change really on the nose profile. It's okay. It just doesn't really change the profile much. I think it smooths out some things. It gives it a little, maybe a slight more sweetness. Funny that the savory Oloroso would do that, but there is some sweetness in Oloroso sherry. It's just not near as sweet as a PX. So I don't think I'm seeing a lot of change. It does have a little more of an Amontillado kind of a type of taste. It doesn't get to the almondy is that far that way, but it's it's better with than without. I think the added Oloroso does give it a little more. It gives it a little more roundness. It actually takes a lot of the mineral bitter edges off of the dram, which I think could work with Glenmorangie 10. So if anyone has the time, and if you're not afraid to get yourself a bottle of PX and Oloroso sherry, which I highly recommend doing because this stuff is fun to do, and you already have a Glenmorangie tin lying around somewhere, which hopefully some of you guys do, um, try it out. I would if I had it. I don't have any myself, but try, give a slight pour of the tin and just a couple drops, add drops as needed for the Oloroso sherry, and let me know if it works for you, because since it works with this, and this is kind of a similar profile, the finish, the minty finish is kind of might be drawn out a little bit more with the Oloroso. The savoriness might be a little bit too much for the finish, but I'm not complaining. I do like it better, I think, than the original by itself. But let's do the PX and then come back and see, comparatively. Now, the funny thing is, in this, you definitely see a color change. It's not tremendously darker, but it's noticeably darker with the. Let me see if you can see the difference. Maybe not as much, but this is the Oloroso. Not a whole lot left in there, but I think it's got more of a overall yellow, a full maize-like color with the PX. Definitely more sweetness on the nose. The sherry is coming through a bit. Now, I know the purists are going to hate me for doing this, but this is for the people that, like myself, that go and try all these, distilleries that are out there, and you're kind of like, it's not bad. It's just not, something I'm going to ever spend $60, $70 for another bottle of. I will never buy a 10 and a 10. Probably again, I might get a 15 or 18 if it's out there. I think they do have a 17, but for what I have left, I'm trying to find ways to make it worth my while drinking rather than pouring out or giving away. So if I'm going to enjoy it, sorry about the playing around with the mic, but if I'm going to enjoy it, I might as well, do it just, to see what happens and see if it makes it better. And if it makes it better, then why not do it? Oh wow, transplanting some high-end stuff. It's got a Glencairn 21, which I've had the 13 and I really like. It's the Reawakening. If I remember correctly, it had some really nice light fruits like grapes and white grapes and pears and yellow light apples. It had some Gregelic-esque type of spices, like a white pepper, I think, was in there. Trying to remember. It's been a while since I've had it, but it was a good dram. I'm not sure what the 21's like. Let me know. Glentronic 21, the Parliament. That's a beast. That's a sherry a beast. What's the profile on the Glencairn 21 dram, just out of curiosity? And what did you think of the process? What percentages did you use? And after, don't put it in now, but after the show's over, if you don't mind slapping in the spreadsheet and put a color on it, let me know if you thought it was decent, stay away, pretty good, or awesome sauce. I love that legend. It's funny. 80-20 respectively. So 80% of the Glencairn 21 and then 21 of the sherry, which makes sense, I think. I'm not sure what the profile on that Glencairn 21 is, but I think it's probably more like a lighter. I'm not sure how light or delicate it is, though. As Glenmorangie 21, even though that's a well-refined Scotch, it's got some really profound sherry going on from what I remember. Lots of notes, very complex. I'm not sure what the Glencairn 21 brought to it or vice versa, but definitely talk about it if you don't mind, Dram. I'm all, I'm sharing the experience with you guys, so don't feel like you're taking over the channel or anything. I always like it when you guys, throw out your feeling. Oh, okay. All bourbon matured. Makes sense then. Yeah. 80% of that with a hint of that sherry. You got two solid 21-year-old drams together, I would think it would work. I just don't know if it would add, if what's the word for it? Is it better than the sum of each part? Like if you had a dram of the Glencadam 21, you had a dram of the Glendronach 21, and you had a dram of what you created, would you rather go to what you created versus one of the originals by itself? That's, I think, the only way you can really say that your experiment is successful. And not to say that if it's not successful that you did something wrong, but just the choice of the profiles that you're combining, you know, was that successful? And I think that's the only way really to determine if it was, if you'd rather have it than one of the separate things by itself. Let me know what you think. You might have to, unfortunately, get a dram of each one, and it's a process. It's not as simple as just throwing it, unless you have had a lot of it each on its own enough to remember every nuance that you like or dislike about it. But, um, definitely something to take your time with. It's something to study, something to have fun with. It's not, I think I'm kind of doing this as part of the hobby, I guess. But more geared, I mean, not to say you can't do it with some high-end scotch. Of course, it's your scotch. You do it with what you want. But this is really also geared towards the guys that have some off-the-wall stuff. They're kind of like, oh man, this is a rough one. This Mortlock, whatever it is not really doing it for me. What can I do to make it better? And this is a way to keep track of what works with what to make it, a little more appealing, I guess. Not to say, some of these by themselves are not rock solid. So, all right. Wow, different. PX definitely brings the sweetness. And it has really kind of a nice combination wise. It gives it a kind of a chocolatey finish with the mint, which gives it a chocolatey minty finish, which is kind of cool actually. Didn't think of it that way, but I think I'm leaning towards the PX with the Tinnick, which is kind of what I was thinking, because the sweet peat or sweet mint, those profiles kind of go. I've been really enjoying the 13-year-old Glencadam, very fruity, easy sipping. Yeah, I did a review on that a while back. If you haven't seen, and if you have more, feel free to join me virtually for that review, Ryan. I went over that one, I'm pretty sure, pretty closely, and I remember liking it. It was a surprise because it was one of those distilleries that doesn't get a lot of press. It's not all in everyone's face, And sadly, as I think Dram enjoys the 21, I'm not sure if he likes it on its own, but the Glencadam is malt forward, honey, slightly vegetal, even fruit and oak spice. Yeah, that's kind of similar to what I remember on the 13. With the fruits, the oakiness, the slight vegetal notes, kind of like a Kragelicky 13 has also. I think it had a little, that spicy note, white pepper type thing, a little malty. But I like a whoppery taste, malty taste. I think this is more successful than the Oloroso, only because I really like the what it brings, that mint. And that's a big part of the finish. Yeah, that's a success. So like, I'll show you how I do it. So I already added the Tinnick 10. I'm going to say, and I'll be specific so you guys know what I used, so there's no like guessing game. Lustau, it's Lustau. I'll put PX Sherry, and I'll also put Lustau Oloroso Sherry. And there's no age statements or anything on these sherries. It's 17% alcohol by volume. I just went to the liquor store and I'm like, hey, you guys have sherry? Sure. Do you have PX and Oloroso? Yes. Here's all the sherry. What do you recommend is a good, sherry brand? And this one's 20% by volume on the Oloroso dry deal. Let me take a look at, yeah, very sweet on the PX profile. So with that said, I got these in here, so I'm going to do, I'll have to do, unfortunately, 2 sets to make it make sense. That's okay, though, because you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll keep it in my column because it's for me. So I got Tinnick with a PX. I'm going to do 99% with a 1%, because that's the only way I could think of to give you the hint that I just, touched it with a little bit. It wasn't one of those parts, by parts kind of thing. So that way you'll know it's just kind of a dusting or a few drops. And then we'll do 99 on the other Tinnick 12%, and we'll do 1% on the Oloroso sherry. Now, the PX with the 10, I thought was actually well done, and I would try it again. Pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and color that a light green color. And for the Oloroso sherry with it, it wasn't bad. It wasn't red stay away, but I probably wouldn't want to do that again, really, because that meant with the Oloroso, just for me, that meant Oloroso marriage was almost overly savory. The minerality wasn't saved by the PX sweetness. It was kind of just left hanging there, and the two tastes just didn't meld as well. So I'm going to color that yellow. Done deal. It's that easy. So now I'm going to save it. I'm going to exit out. And if you guys are going to exit out, go back in, you should see now my updates that I did. And you should see, just keep to your column, but add as many whiskeys and combinations as you wish. There are no limits to the rows we can have. We can have hundreds and hundreds and thousands and go all crazy. But just keep them grouped up, color them the way you feel, and we'll just go from there and see what happens with it. I think it'll be a fun experiment. I just got to get Gawkin to label his 80-20 on his Glenfarclas Kilchoman experiment, and I think we'll be up to date so far. And feel free to play around with it. Don't be afraid. Worst case scenario, always try to use bottles you already have. If you are going to make an investment in sherry, it's not expensive. It's like $20-$30, I think, for a decent bottle of PX or Oloroso sherry. So you're not, shelling out hundreds to do this experiment. Get you some 10s and 12-year-olds, so different distilleries, and throw it up there and see what happens. 10 is not as bright as the 10 or the 13 for the 21. Okay. So kind of a darker, probably a thicker dram, which is to be expected because even though it's refined, it probably has a really nice, powerful taste overall. I would think the vegetal thing kind of throws me off. I'm hoping that works with the Glenmorangie 21 Parliament. I would think it would. It would probably be very complex overall because you've got the bourbon, you've got the slightly vegetal stuff, you got the spiciness, you got some maltiness and honey, and then you're taking the Parliament is like really great combination of lots of different. I think it's got both PX and Oloroso sherry. If I'm not, I might be off. Let me take a quick look so I'm not an idiot here. Let me go back. Here we go. Going to a quick look up here. Glenmorangie 21 Parliament. That would be yes, Oloroso and PX sherry. So you've got that's going to be quite quite a complex feat there, Dram. I think you picked some. I mean, you said it's pretty damn good. So that's is it awesome sauce good, or is it pretty decent good? That's what I want you to think about. And if you did well, you think, then give yourself a hand, because that's a lot of comp. I mean, you started, if this is your first blend for the show, man, you picked a quite a high end slash complex plethora of different things going on. You've got the vegetal aspect you told me about. You've got the sherry aspect from the Parliament. You've got the maltiness. You've got the spiciness and the woody notes to I mean, and this all has to come together at just the right deal. And smart of you to pick to start with the bourbon as your base, make that the 80%, do the 20 with the sherry, because if you reversed it, it would probably be not nearly as good. I'm thinking. I'd say it's awesome sauce. Just add in more 21 and ruin it. Yeah, I was gonna say if it was the reverse, I don't think it would work, because the sherry would just be too much for the notes for you to appreciate the vegetal aspects and the spiciness and the woody notes with it. Oh damn! Uh-oh. What is that? What's wrong, Trooper? What happened? I'm afraid to ask. Hopefully it was a good oh damn, or maybe you were just congratulating Dram for his finding an awesome sauce combination. Um, and this is actually good for distilleries, because I normally wouldn't go out and buy a Glencairn 21 just for the hell of it, but the Glenmorangie 21 is one that I would rarely drink. Now I'm more inclined to go and get that Glencairn 21, not just for the fact that Dram likes it and says it's a pretty good Dram, but he loves it with the combination of this Glenmorangie 21. So it's like, gives me an excuse to go and get a specific bottle I normally wouldn't get. So this is I think a no-brainer win-win for everybody when it comes to having fun with the hobby. With that said, I'm going to have to cut this one off, guys, because I do have to work tomorrow. And like I said, I've been in a lot of pain recently, but struggled through and had a lot of fun with you guys, as I always do. I really appreciate every time that you guys come on board. And to LVMH, great brand for Glenmorangie. Look forward to many more bottles. I need to get my own Alta. I did love the Spios and the Tucel, like I said. Looking forward to trying some more private editions. Nope, blew it. Uh-oh. Lagavulin 9 and with Macallan and Glenlivet. Now you're talking a three-pronger there, Trooper. You got to start small, my friend. Start with 2, and because once you get if you're talking 3 different profiles, you're talking extreme complexities. Cheers to Dram, cheers to Ryan, everybody else still watching along, and Solange Yvonne. I hope see you guys soon, and don't forget to put your numbers in, your colors, save it. If you have a problem and it doesn't show up, wait an hour or so if you can, or the next day go in, put your names, your colors of your stuff in there, save it, and just double check, make sure it stays there, and you should be good to go. And I think it'll be a fun experiment with you guys. Ciao for now.